Some bonds are so unexpected they change lives forever. Imagine a wild, untamable police dog, feared by everyone, refusing to trust anyone until a young boy steps into its world. No commands, no force, just patience, courage, and a quiet heart. What happens next will shock everyone who witnesses it. But before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching? Everyone at the training facility had already given up on the dog. They called him a lost case, a mistake, a hazard nobody asked for. A K9 unit dog that was supposed to protect lives had instead become a danger to those trying to train him. 3 handlers had quit. 1 needed stitches. Another refused to ever step near the kennel again. The dog wasn't just aggressive. He was silent, and that silence scared people more than his growls ever did. He had been found months earlier during a violent raid on an illegal fighting ring where dogs were used as entertainment for criminals. Most of them were broken beyond repair. Some didn't even survive. But this one had survived, and that made his mind even darker. He trusted no one, not hands, not voices, not commands. Whenever someone approached his cage, his body would stiffen like a trap about to snap. His amber eyes didn't blink. They didn't search. They didn't beg like other dogs. They just warned. The officers had tried everything: discipline, distance, pressure, slow exposure. But the more they tried, the more dangerous he became. He refused food from hands, refused eye contact, refused control. Eventually, they stopped calling him by any name. He became just the problem. At the edge of the city, somewhere between the noise of highways and the silence of abandoned land, the training facility remained his prison, a cage of steel and concrete. Until a small boy came walking through its gates. His name wasn't important to the officers. He was just a visitor, the son of a maintenance worker who cleaned the kennels after hours. He was thin, quiet, and didn't ask questions the way most kids did. He didn't knock on the cages, didn't tease, didn't make noise. He only observed. For days he stood at a distance, watching the dog in silence. He noticed things others had never cared to: how the dog never slept deeply, how his ears twitched even during rest, how his paws remained tense like he was always prepared to run or fight. One evening, when the sun was low and the trainers had already left, the boy sat on the cold floor near the cage. No one noticed him. No one stopped him. The dog stood immediately, eyes locking onto the silent figure. No barking. No growling. Just tension. The boy didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply sat there, as if he had no fear of being torn apart. Not because he was brave, but because he understood fear differently. Minuets passed, then more. The sun vanished completely, but the boy didn't leave. And slowly, something strange happened. The dog's breathing softened. Not calm, not relaxed, but less sharp. His body didn't attack the bars. He didn't snarl. He just watched, like he was trying to understand why this human was different from all the others. That night, the boy returned home without telling anyone what he had done. But the next evening, he came again. The second evening felt different before it even began. The air carried a strange stillness, like the world was holding its breath. The boy arrived earlier than before, slipping past the gates as the last sunlight bled across the concrete yard. The facility was louder during the day, boots, commands, barking. But at this hour, it felt like a forgotten place standing between two worlds. He didn't walk straight to the cage this time. He stopped near the entrance, listening. The distant rattle of chains. A fan buzzing above the corridor. The quiet pacing of restless dogs. And then the familiar soft sound of paws against steel. The dog was awake. Always awake. The boy moved slowly, like someone approaching an animal made of broken glass. Each step was careful, balanced, almost rehearsed. But no one had taught him how to do this. He simply followed a feeling he didn't know how to explain. When he reached the cage, he didn't sit right away. He stood. Not too close. Not too far. The dog stared at him. The same sharp amber eyes. The same controlled tension. But something had shifted, so subtly that even trained officers wouldn't have noticed. He didn't look like he was preparing to attack. He looked like he was waiting. The boy crouched this time instead of sitting. His fingers brushed the floor, tracing lines in the thin layer of dust. No sudden movements, no staring into the eyes too long. Animals hated that. He had learned that from watching stray dogs in his neighborhood. A few moments passed. Then he pulled something from his pocket. Not a toy, not a treat. Just a small piece of cloth, old, soft, worn. It belonged to a broken blanket from his home. He placed it on the ground, slowly pushing it closer to the bars, but never crossing the invisible boundary the dog had drawn in his mind. Then he pulled his hand back. No force, no expectation, just an offer. The dog didn't move. Minutes stretched. The boy leaned against the cold wall, looking away, refusing to pressure him by watching. He studied the ceiling instead, cracked, stained, forgotten like everything else here. Behind the bars, the dog lowered his head slightly. Not in submission. In calculation. He stepped forward once, then froze. His nose twitched, drawing in the unfamiliar scent, not fear, not aggression, not authority. Something softer, something human. But without threat. His paw hovered for a moment, before gently touching the cloth. The metallic echo of that soft step filled the silent hallway. The boy didn't react, but his breathing changed. Slower, like relief he didn't know he needed. From that evening onward, a routine began. Every day, the boy brought something small. Not to tame him, but to remind him. A different scent, a different sound, a different presence. Sometimes he just sat there without bringing anything at all. No commands, no obedience training, no pressure to change. Just shared silence between two broken beings. But the trainers noticed. They noticed the dog no longer slammed himself against the bars, no longer refused food completely, no longer growled every time a shadow moved. They didn't know why. And when they found out, it was because of a child. They laughed, not cruelly, dismissively. They said it would last a week. Then he would snap, because broken things don't heal so easily. But they didn't realize something. That dog hadn't stopped being dangerous. He had just started choosing when not to be. The days blurred into weeks, each one folding into the next like pages in a worn-out book. The facility still smelled of iron and dust, yet in a small corner of it, a quiet revolution was taking place. The boy had become a constant presence, soft, patient, unassuming, and the dog had begun to acknowledge him not as a visitor, but as a part of its fractured world. One morning, the boy arrived to find the dog pacing more restlessly than usual. His amber eyes flickered with something new, curiosity. He wasn't just aware of the boy now, he was anticipating him. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the boy noticed. The air between them had changed. Trust, fragile as it was, had begun to take root. Instead of sitting in the usual spot, the boy stayed back and watched. He didn't need to offer treats or toys. He simply let the dog observe him, let him learn that this presence was consistent, non-threatening, and patient. The dog tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the boy's intentions, and for the first time he didn't growl when the boy moved closer. By midweek, the routine evolved. The boy began speaking softly, not commands, not coaxing words, just stories. Little tales of his own life, the stray cat he fed near his home, the neighbor's garden in spring, the way rain made puddles look like tiny mirrors. He spoke as if the dog could understand every word, which in a way he did. Every pause, every careful inflection mattered. Every silence between the words became as important as the words themselves. The dog began responding in small, almost imperceptible ways. A tail flick, a lowered ear, the faintest nudge against the bars, nothing overt, nothing for the trainers to notice yet. But for the boy, these were victories. Small victories, yes, but victories nonetheless. Every gesture told him that connection, even between beings so different and broken, was possible. Then came the first real test. A new handler entered the facility, bringing with him an air of authority that had always sent the dog into a frenzy. The dog barked, lunged, snapped, the full force of years of fear and aggression. Yet when the boy approached, something remarkable happened. The dog hesitated. His eyes flickered to the boy, a question there, unspoken but clear. Do I have to? The boy stayed calm, silent, patient. He didn't command, he didn't rush. He just existed, a steady presence amidst chaos. And then the dog stepped back, not submissively but deliberately. The handler was baffled. This was a dog that hadn't obeyed in months, yet here he was, choosing restraint because of a child who had never demanded it. The boy extended a hand, not for contact, not for control, but simply as an offer. The dog sniffed, then retreated. That was all a tentative truce, but it was enough. At the end of the week, the change was undeniable. The dog would approach the boy without hesitation, lie down near him without prompting, and even allow a gentle touch on the head, something that would have been unthinkable before. It wasn't complete trust, not yet, but it was a start. And for the boy, that start was everything. He realized something profound. Healing wasn't about breaking fear. It wasn't about enforcing obedience. It was about giving a broken soul the space to choose peace for itself. The trainers remained skeptical. They watched, analyzed, whispered among themselves, certain this fragile connection would shatter. But the boy knew better. He understood that some things couldn't be forced, couldn't be measured, couldn't be contained by rules or cages. Real transformation required patience, respect, and most importantly, unwavering presence. And he had all three in abundance. That night, as the facility fell silent, the boy sat beside the cage longer than usual. The dog, no longer pacing, lay down, his head resting near the bars. Their eyes met, and for the first time, neither moved to assert dominance. There was no fear, no aggression, just acknowledgement. A silent agreement that in this fractured, chaotic world they had found a moment of understanding, and maybe, just maybe, a glimpse of freedom that neither cage nor circumstance could take away. The days that followed were unlike anything the facility had seen before. The bond between the boy and the dog had grown into something that could no longer be ignored, even by the most skeptical trainers. It wasn't just a connection, it was a quiet force that radiated calm, patience, and resilience. Every step the boy took toward the cage, the dog mirrored, not with obedience but with choice. It was trust on its own terms. One crisp morning, the boy arrived earlier than usual. The sky had a faint pink hue and the air smelled of wet earth. He noticed the dog standing unusually still, ears perked, tail low but steady. Something was different. The boy approached slowly, his heartbeat echoing a rhythm of anticipation. When he extended a hand, the dog didn't hesitate. Instead, it nudged gently against him, as though offering an invitation rather than waiting for permission. That was the first time the cage door had been irrelevant to their connection. The dog had stepped forward willingly, bridging the gap between confinement and freedom with a courage born of trust. The trainers witnessing this were dumbfounded. Months of protocols, commands, and reinforcement had failed to achieve what a single child had accomplished in weeks. Some whispered theories about innate sensitivity, others about miraculous intuition, but the boy himself understood none of that mattered. It was simple. Respect, patience, and empathy were more powerful than force or fear. Word of the unusual bond spread through the facility. Volunteers came to watch, expecting chaos, but instead finding calm. The dog allowed touch, followed gentle gestures, and even responded to playful banter. It became apparent that the animal had discovered not only a friend but a safe space, a place where vulnerability didn't invite punishment and presence didn't demand performance. One afternoon, the boy decided to test the limits of their trust. He removed the leash for the first time, taking a cautious step back. The dog, now confident yet cautious, didn't flee. Instead, it trotted to him, eyes bright with recognition. The boy smiled, feeling a surge of exhilaration mixed with a profound sense of responsibility. He knew that every small victory carried weight. Every moment of choice the dog made reinforced the fragile scaffolding of its newfound courage. Weeks turned into months. The dog transformed from a volatile, unpredictable creature into a model of restrained power and gentle loyalty. But beyond the facility walls, the boy's influence had created something far more enduring. He had shown that even the most hardened souls could heal, that fear could be softened by understanding. And that love, even quiet, unassuming, non-verbal love, could bridge worlds that seemed irreconcilable. Then came the day of the ultimate test. The facility planned a demonstration, inviting potential adopters, donors, and trainers from across the country. They wanted to showcase the transformation, expecting a display of obedience and performance. But the boy and the dog had their own message. The demonstration began with commands, whistles, and forced routines. The dog, however, followed none of them. Instead, it turned to the boy, waiting. The room fell silent. Eyes widened. Cameras clicked. The boy stepped forward and spoke softly, recounting their journey, describing each moment of trust built, every small act of patience, every choice that led to this day. He didn't command. He didn't pressure. He shared a story, their story. And in that story, the dog became the hero, not because it obeyed, but because it chose to trust. It walked calmly beside the boy, head high, eyes bright, movements deliberate yet free. No tricks, no dramatics, just the pure, unadulterated expression of a bond forged through compassion. The audience sat in stunned silence, then erupted in applause, not for obedience, but for courage, understanding, and transformation. The boy looked down at the dog, a gentle smile forming, eyes shining with unspoken gratitude. The dog nudged his hand, then sat obediently beside him, not out of fear, but because it wanted to. That moment crystallized everything the boy had known. Healing is a choice, trust is earned, and even the most broken hearts can find light when met with unwavering patience and kindness. In the weeks that followed, the dog was officially released from the facility, adopted into a loving home where its spirit could roam free. The boy continued to visit, their bond unbroken. And though they had parted from the confines of steel and rules, the lesson endured. The world is full of cages, literal and figurative, yet the courage to trust, to wait, and to love can unlock even the most formidable of barriers. In the end, it wasn't about taming a wild heart. It was about allowing a heart to heal, and in doing so, discovering that the greatest freedom comes not from control, but from connection.